Yeah. Good. How are you?
All right, good evening. I would like to call the City of Moorhead Council meeting to order. It is July 12th at 5:30 p.m. Moorhead City Council welcomes public input on issues related on the agenda or of general community interest, time and council permitting. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. There are 3 opportunities to address the council: public hearings, agenda items, and non-agenda items. If you cannot attend in person, there are 2 options to participate: send comments to be read during the agenda item, or call 218-299-5001. Comments will be taken by staff, or you may be connected virtually through WebEx. For more information, please visit the council meetings page on cityofmoorhead.com. And with that, could I get a roll call, please?
Shelley Dahlquist.
Here.
Matt Gilbertson. Here. Laura Caroon. Heather Niesemeyer.
Here.
Deb White.
Here.
Larry Seljevold.
Here.
Chuck Hendrickson.
Here.
Steve Lindos.
Here.
And Mayor Shelley Carlson.
Here. All right, could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, moving on to number 3 on the agenda. Manager Molly, is there any agenda amendments?
There are none, Mayor.
Okay. Was number 13 taken off consent, though? Your mic's not on. There you
Sorry, I was going to handle that. Number 13 has been requested to be removed from the consent agenda.
go. Okay. All right. Okay, so number 13 is removed from the consent agenda. All right. So number 4, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Who seconded? Oh, Councilmember Dahlquist. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Consent agenda passes. Thank you. And moving on to number 5, recognitions and presentations. And I am going to turn that over to Michael Maddox with the FM Metropolitan Council of Governments, the Transit Development Plan. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. It's good to be in front of a body. I think this is my first in-person presentation in quite a long while, and it feels good.
This is one of the first time all 8 council members and myself are here too, so welcome.
Well, I'll try to keep it fairly brief. Again, my name is Michael Maddox. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner for the Fargo-Moorhead Metropolitan Council of Governments, MetroCog for short, and we are the regional MPO for the Fargo-Moorhead region. And for the past little over a year, we've been working with MapBus and project consultants to update MapBus's transit development plan for the 2021 to 2025 time period. You can kind of view the TDP as MapBus's comprehensive plan. It incorporates a 5-year vision. However, on this go around, we decided to maybe take a longer view, and you'll see that when we kind of get into some of the project development and things that we're recommending. It might take quite a while to get there. So just want to prep you for there in case you see some sticker shock at the end of the presentation. But we'll just move into it here if I can figure this out. Okay. Again, the purpose of the 5-year development plan is to basically review all of the policies, all of the routes, everything to do with MapBus, including its coordination with other regional transit providers, whether it be in the ADA world or some of the other small providers in the area. It goes through a fairly robust existing conditions where they look at where the buses go today, they look at the coordinating, look at the internal policies, they look at staff, they look at kind of everything that has to do with transit in the area and evaluate it. We do a fairly robust engagement for the TDP. However, as we all know, over the past year and a half, That has been directly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. We've been trying to get the word out for this plan as much as possible over that period, conducting many surveys and public outreaches via electronic video sharing. We also did kind of put some boards up in the Ground Transportation Center in Fargo where all the buses kind of come in and come out of. So there was opportunity to do some kind of sticker polling, the traditional style open house work that we usually do with these plans. But we really wanted to kind of continue outreach through this plan. We just did conduct our final public outreach effort and had a couple people on that call with us, and they provided some comments on the final recommendations. So through that engagement, there were a number of findings that kind of rang home, rang true, that we heard from most people. One was on the trip purchase. We kind of knew that for the people that use the bus, work or shopping is kind of the predominant purpose. I'll add in their education as well. A lot of the students use that, but they also use it to go to class, but they also use it to go to work or to go to shopping opportunities. We did see that people want to ride the bus kind of under that 30 minutes or wait under that 30 minutes time frame, so that kind of went into our recommendations. The people that commented were really looking for investments in frequency above everything else. We kind of asked them whether they would want to wait longer for a bus or shorter for a bus, and we kind of had some complex trade-off questions for them, and this is kind of what they really were saying. One of the major things that we've been hearing, this is my second TDP as project manager for MetroCog, and one thing that was resonated that time and this time was the need for Sunday service in our region. We are one of the only regions of our size that haven't implemented Sunday service, and I think that this has been, I know on the Minnesota side, when we look at the state transit planning, one of the recommendations moving forward is to increase service hours, especially on that Sunday. And then just, clear up some perceptions of the unreliability of the service. MAP bus service is very reliable. There are some times though, especially during winter months, where snow and ice and temperature kind of get in the way of that. So we just want to make sure that we are running a reliable service that can be depended upon by its users. So I'll skip over that slide for this to get to the kind of the meat and potatoes of the plan, which is the service development. This is kind of split into two phases, kind of a phase one and a phase two. And each of these can kind of be enacted almost independently, one on top of the other. This could kind of be seen as a prioritization exercise where we're looking at how to prioritize investments over time. And I'll say that the time frame for a lot of the recommendations of the plan are above 10 years. And so when we look at some of that major service investment, and that's just because when you're instituting service enhancements and frequency enhancements on your system that run every day of the week, that's the most expensive thing. Not 52 Sundays out of the year. That's relatively minor compared to adding another bus to a system. You have to pay for the capital cost and then pay for that driver and all that. So that is kind of what gets pricey over time. So this is if you want to look at the screen here, the long-term system map for Moorhead. You can see there are a number of reconfigured services, I'll call them, and a couple of new services as well, where they took underperforming routes and modified them to try to gain some more ridership and try to service some maybe different areas to pick up some ridership that we know that are in high-density housing locations. So we'll just go over kind of the key changes here. There is just a simplification of 1, 2, and 5. If anybody is familiar with the system, I think Route 2 and 5 are interlined currently, and there's some confusion with when one bus changes to the other bus, and we've been trying to clear this up for a couple of years now, and so the consultants proposed a way to do this. We really were trying to choose, and this is both true of Fargo and Moorhead side, to solidify certain corridors to provide kind of a base level spine system of very frequent service. You can see this on the Fargo side on the Route 15. which runs every 15 minutes back and forth from the West Acres Mall to GTC. And so we trying to replicate that in other areas of our system because we know that we still have to rely on kind of a hub and spoke network. We're not big enough to just strictly run a bus up and down a single corridor. But it also signals to our partners in planning, the land use planning departments, and they can kind of use that as a signal to densify along those corridors. So map bus isn't necessarily having to jump to different pockets of affordable housing within the area, which is costly when you're going between certain islands of high density and there's low density where there's nobody riding the bus. So solidifying corridors, another kind of a big paramount theme that runs throughout this transit development plan. There was a little bit of adjustment to some of the shopping routes in Moorhead. The current Route 4 kind of loops on itself. It's not very efficient, so we wanted to make sure it just goes to and from. And this was solidified with other systems that are kind of running back and forth from the GTC to the Dilworth Walmart. And we'll get that in visual as we go. The new Route 8, which is kind of an interesting new service addition, which would run from the Dilworth Walmart over to the West Acres Mall Transit Hub without going through downtown. It would utilize the A Street in Moorhead and University exits to kind of span one of the only bridges around there to span the Red River of the North. So we thought of that as maybe an interesting way for people to not have to go through downtown for all of their services and maybe have more of a direct route. But again, I'll say that a lot of the major focus was on increasing frequency and increasing that weekend service that I already mentioned. There's also a new type of service that we call that MapBus calls Tap Ride that is very popular in the industry right now for servicing areas where a fixed route bus wouldn't necessarily be successful. And this is more of an on-demand service where a rider calls and they'll pick you up and drop you off at, say, a hub location. There are a couple proposed in our area on the map here. So like I said before, a lot of these future transit investments are phased in over a longer period of time. We know that with a lot of the studies that we've done in the last couple of years, namely the MapBus Transit Authority study that was just completed last year, I believe, and then the facility analysis was before, are all documents that are leading towards the same goal. We wanted to align that with the planning horizon of all of those plans so we can kind of make sure that we're planning everything in, sorry about that, just threw me off. But there are a lot of other factors that I mentioned before that would affect the overall cost, and really those frequencies are those cost drivers. And then I already mentioned before that we're trying to make sure that we're solidifying transit corridors for the best service possible. So you can see the impact of some of these phases over time is that we grow from a total peak vehicle fleet right now of 33 to a possible fleet of about 53 in the future, not including the spares that are required. And so we would grow as an agency from about 12 million in operating budget to about 21 million in operating budget over time. And like I said, that would grow a lot of our services to be that half an hour base or better, and then provide weekend services along with that. And in order to do that on routes, sometimes that not just adding one bus, but 2 buses, depending upon the length of routes. And so for Moorhead, that turns out to be this. One thing that's beneficial to the Moorhead side is there is really strong support from the state of Minnesota for the transit service. And they have included in their state transit assessments growth that they would like to see within our region, and that they would directly support that growth. So that's a definite benefit to this side of the river, that the state so highly values transit service, and with that value adds capital. Whereas on the North Dakota side of the river, they're not as lucky A lot of the revenues would have to come from maybe an authority structure that I mentioned before, the study that occurred last year. So this would be the growth in the possible growth over time in the peak vehicles for Moorhead. So kind of our next steps, we wanted to present this to you today. The staff is currently reviewing the draft report and going over with it our consultants. And after that, we'll be posting it online for everyone to review. We're hoping that that's within the next week or so. And then we will be taking it in front of all the local councils or commissions within the area. And hopefully that they will agree with the recommendations of that plan. And then it'll go through our MetroCog's boards, our Transportation Technical Committee and Policy Board. And with that, thank you for listening to the presentation today, and I would welcome any questions if you have them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maddox. What is your website, just so people are aware of it and if they
Sure.
want to go to it?
I believe it's www.metrocog.org. fmmetrocog.org.
Okay, fmmetrocog.org.
COG, yeah,
Okay,
.org.
wonderful. Any questions or comments? Councilmember White.
Michael, thank you for coming and really appreciate the presentation. And I'm eager to see some of these things implemented. I'm glad to see the movement towards adding Sunday service and just really looking at some of those gaps. And, you know, makes me think that we've been talking a lot about workforce shortage that we're experiencing in the community. And one of the things that can help is if we have better access to transportation. And then your data shows that people are saying they're using it for work. And we have still, there's jobs in our community that could be filled if people could get access to transportation, but if they're on Sundays or they're late at night. And I know we've done some work with things like the industrial park out in Fargo and added some, transportation so that people could get to those specific jobs. And so I see that you're focusing on that area, and I think that's really important. Really, my only question was just that you mentioned that you've closed sort of the public comment period, but I know it looks like till August 19th, though, there's still opportunities for public input. So if folks are seeing this now and they do want to provide some other input, well, how could they go about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll maybe just rephrase my comment there. We completed our formal comment period where we are actually conducting active meetings. However, we will accept comments on the plan up until the date, and that August 19th correlates to our policy board meeting. So we will be posting the plan online, and then any comments are welcome. Or if you can't find it online, we'll have a printed copy at MetroCog's offices. Feel free to email me or drop by, and I can get you any materials that you wish or talk through the plan with you as well.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Lindos.
Thank you, Mayor Carlson. Everything my colleague, Councilmember White, just said, I echo. She covered almost all the questions and comments that I was going to make. Just adding on Tap Ride, that is an exciting kind of addition, and trying to get that word out to people that don't know. Sometimes I even forget to tell people, hey, there's this great service that you can take advantage of, but just in certain locations. Could you clarify, maybe just so people understand the phases, especially about phase 2, whether or not they're all independent, or, because we covered this at one point and I thought maybe people should know that it's not a smorgasbord.
Sure, yeah. So the phase 1 is just minor route altercation or modifications. Whereas in phase 2, I will say some of them are independent and some of them are not. When we start in like 2A and 2B and 2C, those are kind of depend on one another, but when we get to the end, the 2E, I believe, is the Sunday service portion, and that can really be implemented at any time, and that's why it was specifically put in a singular phase by itself. And so Moorhead and Fargo could come together and really implement that type of service at any time that it would choose. And maybe just one thing too on the economic portion. We all know that Amazon Hub is coming to the area, and we did address that in the plan and looked at providing some type of service up to the facility. It is pretty far up there, pretty far beyond, I would say, our core network of routes. And so we did look at the possibility of running through the airport property, which we do not do now, and then running up the old highway there up into the Amazon location. That is in one of the later phases, and we would hope that there would be conversations with Amazon to see if that route would be necessary for the employment opportunities that they're offering.
Thank you, Mr. Maddox. Is there any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, I know that you mentioned that you can't figure out the remedy for the snow and the ice, but you know, if MetroCog wants to work on that, I'm sure our Public Works Director would be very appreciative, as would many of us. So
We'll get around to it. And
All right.
I would be remiss without thanking Lori Van Beek, Moorhead's transit manager, for her help during this project. And if you wanted to say anything as well during, okay, being shy, sitting in the audience there. No, but really the staff is of great help to me and the consultants in figuring this out. I deal with this at such a high level, but they are really in the trenches doing the work from day to day. So
I would concur. Lori is an exceptional gem. Silly. All right, thank you.
thank you.
All right, moving on to number 6, the approval of the minutes from June 28th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve?
Niesemeyer, motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Niesemeyer and then Lindos. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Approval of minutes have passed. All right, moving on to citizens addressing the council. I believe we have one person on the phone who wishes to make a comment in reference to number 13 on the agenda. Ma'am, can you hear us? Hello? Carol, are you able to hear us?
If the caller can just hit *6 to unmute.
Carol, can you hear us? Madam Clerk, are you able to see if she's still on the line, or?
She can hear us if she just wants to try calling back in.
Hello?
Hi, Carol?
Yes.
Hi. Okay, good. This is Mayor Carlson. Thank you for calling in. I have already informed the council that you are calling in reference to number 13 on our agenda. What I will need to have
Okay,
you do
yep.
is state your full name and your address for the record, and then you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, my name is Carol Kilsdonk, 808 63rd Avenue North in Moorhead. And I'm calling regarding the cup that has been requested by the next door neighbors at 802 63rd Avenue North, or 812, I'm sorry, to construct a huge building for car restoration purposes. I guess we have a number of concerns regarding, well, basically the size of the building, the place where it would be located. I mean, the structure is bigger than most of the homes in Brentwood Acres, and this is a quiet residential neighborhood. My own feeling is that building belongs in the Moorhead Industrial Park, not here. I have a lot of other concerns about it. This has been typically a neighborhood that does not do this kind of stuff. So I guess before any further permissions for it go on, I'd really like to know why the property isn't surveyed by the city tour the area before even considering this motion for the building permit and whatever. There is plenty of space on the north side of the Wyans property to put that building up rather than to put it between our house 4 feet from our property line and theirs. And with a building that size, we're going to have real problems with snow buildup, dropping on our property, on our garage, on our shop. Just real concerns about the effect that it'll have on our property. And not to mention, we have talked to a realtor, and this is really, it's going to be tough on our resale. And at our age of 71 and 72, we're kind of looking at maybe not being here that much longer. So I don't know, anything that could be done to help. This has been really kind of a nightmare for us. So, and not only that, but it really has created a domino effect for other people in the neighborhood who never expected this to happen here. You know, we're half a block from a beautiful city park that Moorhead put up a few years back. And it's just, like I say, it's a residential neighborhood. I don't think it belongs in the car restoration business. So
Thank you.
I guess if anybody has any questions, they could ask me for sure and try to answer.
Yep, thank you, ma'am. Actually, when citizens address, we don't do a kind of a Q&A back and forth. It's just information for the council to take in. So we appreciate you calling in, and the council members will have that information when they address number 13 on the council agenda. Okay?
Okay,
All right, thank you so much for calling in.
you bet. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, moving on to number 9, property tax exemption for retail strip center located at 828 30th Avenue South. And I will turn this over to Derek LaPointe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. We finally have the big day here where we're closing a great project by Enclave Companies. Brian Bachman's here if you do have any specific questions about the project. I'll be brief as we've all kind of got a little bit of a teaser of this at the last few meetings. We're all well aware that the apartment building, Emery Apartments, has already kind of seen some movement, and we're excited for that one to come. This is specifically related to the commercial redevelopment. On your screen here is a little bit of a preliminary site plan of what the whole site will look like. There will be a portion of the south building demolished, about 20,000 square foot, to accommodate a new entry point. You'll see some of the viewpoints of the building as I scroll through. There is an estimated new value added to be about $2.2 million. As it relates to our commercial industrial property tax exemption and policy, that does equate to a 5-year exemption of that new value added. Obviously, we've gone through a lot of different steps and process with this development group. There's a lot of cohesion between the two development projects through the multifamily as well as this commercial corridor. We've seen Murphy's Pub already established. We have CVS that will be a part of it, and Enclave will continue to work to establish new tenants throughout that project as well. That being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have, and Brian is available for comments as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Are there any questions or comments of either Mr. LaPointe or Mr. Bachman? Oh, Councilmember White.
Thank you. I'm excited to finally see the, some pictures of this, and I'm looking forward to this moving ahead. And one of the things that I really liked is the fact that I see a good amount of outdoor space. And so I didn't know if you could talk a little bit more about that, because I think it fits with this idea of, tying it in with the residential space and creating a place where people can, live and then come over and socialize and shop and things like that. So if you want to talk about that a little bit. And my one question is, the thing I was looking for, because I know you've got some great bike paths around there, and I've noticed some of the plazas down there haven't really as a biker, the one thing that I've noticed they're missing is there's no place to put your bike. There's not enough bike racks. And so even working things like that in there a little bit more too, just to remind people like we are a bike-friendly place and here's a fun place to come and hang out. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, because I think it looks great.
Sure. No, we do have outdoor spaces attributed more probably towards the apartment side, but are trying to definitely bring both projects together. The idea is exactly that, is that the retailers are going to have the benefit of 150 to 200 people directly behind them with easy walkable access. We do have bike parking indoors and outdoors at the apartment project, and there will be some bike parking built into the retail center as well.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Gublerson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Brian and Derek. It's exciting to see, TIF being used just also for redevelopment, not just all new stuff. So, and I see how quickly you move on the apartment building. Just curious on the timeline for the commercial aspect here.
The bids are due back for that project, I believe, Wednesday. So once those are done and set up and put into the system, the goal is to get started on this right away.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With the current building, I know it's in the agenda here, but like with the old Sun Mart, that's going to be demolished?
Yep. What would be the south end of the building? There's about 20,000 square feet that we take off there. There just wasn't adequate parking.
Right.
So that gives us a whole nother parking field, but it also gave us a whole nother frontage that we could use there for users that are going to be able to come in straight off that end.
Okay, yeah, I'm very excited. It's when people exit Moorhead, they're going to see that brand new, beautiful building and apartment. So that's a nice gateway to Moorhead. So appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Great. Well, I think that was it. But I also wanted to say thank you for doing business in Moorhead. I also, like Councilmember Gublerson, was very excited to see. I feel like it was the next day after council that I saw the digging starting for the apartment building right away. It is very exciting. It is going to be a beautiful site as you're coming into Moorhead. So thank you very much for doing that here in Moorhead. All right. Any questions, further questions for Mr. LaPointe? All right. Thank you so much, both of you. Have a good night. So moving on, though, I do need to have a motion. Oh, City Manager Mully.
We need to open a public hearing.
Oh.
First.
Lindhaus moves to open public hearing.
White seconds.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same side. Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize this was a public hearing. All right, are there any members of the public or anyone here that would like to comment on number 9 on our council agenda? Oh, it says public hearing on the agenda, so that would have been a good clue, huh?
Mayor, we may have a caller on the line.
Good.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Hi. Yes, thanks.
Okay,
my
sir.
name is Peter Woyan.
Yep, I'll need you to state your full name, your address, and then you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay. My name is Peter Woyan. I live at 812 63rd Avenue North in Brentwood Edition.
Sir, is this in regards to the retail strip center located at 828 30th Avenue South?
No, I'm sorry. It regards item number 13 on the agenda.
Okay. Can I have you just hold on? Because we're just taking public hearing right now for the retail strip center in South Moorhead. And so we are not quite to number 13 on the agenda, which has to do with the property that you are calling about. So can I just have you hold for a little bit here?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Is there anyone in the audience or on the line who would like to speak to the property tax exemption for the property located at 828 30th Avenue South. Anyone for public hearing? All right. Could I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Niesemeyer moved to close public hearing.
Lindos will second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, the public hearing portion has been closed. I will need a resolution if we are to approve this property tax exemption.
White moves to approve the property tax exemption for 828 30th Avenue South.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Lindos will second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. Then all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Right. The motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Bachman. Thank you, Mr. Lapointe. Moving on to number 11. This is a resolution to approve the renovation of the Yumkamp Center Ship Gallery exhibit, and I will turn this over to the Executive Director, Maureen Kelly Jonason.
Good evening. I understand I'm here to answer questions, so please fire away.
Oh, I apologize. I was under the understanding there was a presentation that was going to be a part of number 11.
Well, there's a presentation in the packet, and then I think Director Johannesson was just going to speak to it. We've got, according to the agreement between the Historic and Cultural Society of Clay County and the City of Moorhead, any significant rehab will be approved by the City Council. There's a pretty incredible design and exhibit that's being planned for the exhibition space. And my understanding is that Maureen was going to share a little bit about that.
Well, okay. You have the design concept, which was done by Brown Nose Design out of Duluth, Minnesota. They are some local folks who are quite familiar with the Yumkamp story, and we're very, very excited about the being a part of the project. This is a concept document. It is not the final design, and there is still lots of room for improvements and recommendations. One of the things that Holly Heidkamp and I talked about, and City Manager Don Molly and I had talked about previously, was the possibility of enclosing the ship gallery in order to improve the humidity conditions for the ship. And so that might become a part of a future actual design concept, or design might end up being a part of the final design. Primarily, the exhibit is going to tell the story not only of the voyage, the building and sailing of the ship to Norway, but it's going to give a little bit of background on Clay County and the fact that Clay County has always been a community that draws people from diverse backgrounds. So there will be references to the Native American population, as well as the early immigrant era and our current refugee and immigrant situations here in current times. So we will have a much more inclusive and interesting and educational experience for all visitors to the museum. The exhibit will be confined primarily to the walls with movable kiosks in the middle of the ship gallery, and this is to accommodate the festivals and other special events that might take place in the ship gallery. So the exhibit itself will be up against the walls, and then the kiosks can be moved out of the way as needed. The kiosks will be including some interactives and some opportunities to enhance the exhibit. One example is we already have a 360-degree tour of the deck of the ship. You can actually go on board the ship right now via our website, but it is not interpreted. It does not have any text with it, and so part of this will be to provide the text and the interpretation, what exactly people are seeing as they step aboard the ship virtually. It will also redo the church exhibit. The church exhibit needs to be updated. New information, better information has emerged, and we wanted to be able to correct some of the errors that are in the 2007 version of it. It's also the stopping point, or the starting point, really, for the tours that go out to see the church. And we wanted it to be in the same design aesthetic. We're looking at a contemporary Nordic aesthetic. You might have seen the color coordination. Should be fairly colorful, even though the drawings are quite monochromatic. The exhibit itself should be quite colorful, with Nordic use of woods and lots of blues, shades of blue. It will have a changing exhibit section where we can change out different ship artifacts so that we can retell different stories, including what the crew ate on board. That's a frequent question. Some of the artifacts that rarely get seen will be coming out. What they wore and why they had to wear certain things, how they repaired the ship, all kinds of different smaller stories that can be changed out. So that will be a fun part of the new vision for the visitor experience. And we hope to increase the technology, the use of technology. That's one of the new things. We hope to increase and improve the children's experience with the exhibit, as it does tend to be rather adult-centered right now. So those are some of the main features of the new exhibit.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council members? Councilmember White.
I feel like I'm dominating tonight. I apologize for that. I love looking at the plans, and in particular, I wanted to highlight, I love the, the idea of the interpreted virtual deck tour. Sounds really cool. I really appreciate the focus on increasing accessibility for those who are visually and hearing impaired. The one question I had is that, and you mentioned you're looking at increasing technology. Have we looked at, I know more museums now are going to where you can use your cell phone to, like they'll have at different places on the exhibits, there's a number and you can just put it in your cell phone. And I know, just as somebody who I have difficulty reading, increasing difficulty reading. And so I sometimes, it really makes it easier to be able to access the information if I can just put it on there. And so we don't need the headsets anymore. We can just use our cell phone. And are we looking at anything like that in the future?
We can look at that. We want it to be as accessible as possible. Our goal, our fundraising goal, is $150,000. The design concept you see right now is $100,000. And so, if we are able to raise more money, then we will be able to include those bells, what we would call bells and whistles. I think it's essential accessibility, and we would love to have a system that is easily in place for people with smartphones, whether QR codes or some other technology.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Lindas.
Just get to follow Councilmember White always. Thank you for the presentation. I'm excited about it. I do have a question at the very end, and maybe a question / buried into a segue off of Councilmember White's, because the opportunity to implement a lot more technology, in particular audio technology. And I know that there's opportunities, for instance, that rock outside the church is the Devil's Rock, where you put the devil's instrument before you get in. So this is from my tours in Norway. And so I know there's these opportunities to potentially, utilize the Fargo Spillemans log and have Hardingfellow music, both live in there, but also potentially recorded, so that people can actually hear the sounds in the church structure, because not everyone gets to go in there for a wedding and hear cool music.
And violin and fiddle music is extraordinary inside the
Yeah.
church. The wood actually sings to the wood in the violin, so it's a very dramatic feeling and sound.
And they're really cool. Well, there was cool preservation because most of the violins in Norway got burned because they were the devil's instrument. And so the instruments that came over here with the immigrants actually got preserved. So the question was, you'd mentioned fundraising. So if members of the public or I want to contribute, how do we do that?
Oh, how wonderful. What a great question. We are just launching our fundraising campaign. It will be 1 year long. Our board members are committed to raising as much funding as they can. We have already actually raised 50% of our goal through grants. The FM Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies have both contributed a total of $75,000. So we're well on our way. But contact me anytime at the UMCOM Center, or contact any board member that you know would be an excellent opportunity. You know a board member, so you can talk to. And anyone on staff will be able to help you with that.
Well on the way, so that's great. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? I just have one question because I know that you said that this is a concept design. I know that when I looked at it, there is probably some good basis for closing off that area to help with the humidity. Since it's a concept design, is there a possibility of that area where you're coming around the corner and now there's nothing there, but you get to see the ship right away, versus enclosing that where you wouldn't see it until you actually go in, to make that maybe more of a glass wall or something of that nature, so you don't lose that just incredible sense. That would just be my feedback. And the other thing I was going to suggest is maybe you could give us the phone number to the Historical Cultural Center, so people listening and watching this have the number of how to reach you, and then if there's a website that they could go to.
Absolutely. 218-299-5511. And just so that just to clarify, on page 19 of the design, you will actually, there'll actually be a very large window to see into, and then there's a little child-size one that's going to be down here, and then an adult-size one up here, to give a peek inside. That's the kind of a more of a come and see the surprise and be able to see the factor on that. So. So people will be able to see it. And a good number of people come by just to see the ship and not come into the museum. So that will still be an opportunity for them.
Wonderful. And then did you have a website?
Website is hcscconline.org. hcscconline.org. And you can actually donate from our website as well.
Thank you so much for that presentation and information. Good luck with all the fundraising.
Thank you.
Right, moving on to number 13. And I believe we do have a caller on the line still.
Mayor, we'll just need a motion to approve that resolution for the UMCOM Center.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, going back then to number 11. Do I have a motion to approve the renovation of the UMCOM Center gallery exhibit? Okay, Shelley
Second.
Dahlquist motion and White second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Thank you. All right, now on to number 13. Do we still have the caller on the line?
Hello.
Hi, sir. Thank you
Hello.
for holding on. I will have you restate your name and address, and then you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Peter Woyan, and we live at 812 63rd Avenue North in Brentwood. and this concerns the project that we want to build a garage space 30 by 50. I just wanted to say that the intention of this has never been commercial. This has always been hobby-related, craft-related. We have a 7-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son, and we've always enjoyed the residential feel in the parks that are here in Brentwood. And we enjoy raising our kids here. They have friends here, and we enjoy the quiet and the country feel that we have. We're both from the country ourselves, my wife Laura and I. As far as this building goes, it's not very much bigger than what would be allowed on our space anyway. So the variance is only slightly larger than what we would have been applying for or getting permission for. And as far as the water on the property and snow load and thing, the Planning Commission has addressed the water drainage and so on, and has come up with I think we've all come up with a good plan that way, and Houston Engineering is involved and is setting the elevations and things. And I think those things have been addressed. And I think in the last 8 years that we've lived here, we've made nice improvements on the property, the house, the driveway, privacy fence, and I think we're an asset to this community, and we respect our neighbors, and we've always gotten along well with everybody in the community here, and we're not noisemakers or a problem of any sort, and there wouldn't be much activity coming and going except ourselves from this garage space. So I just wanted to try to clarify that. We've always had good rapport with the neighbors, and I guess I was surprised with their assumptions on what we're planning on doing. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right. I'm going to just turn it over to you, Ms. Houston, to discuss the conditional use permit at 812 63rd Avenue North.
Hello, and thank you, Mayor Carlson, council members. I am Robin Houston. I'm your city planner. Tonight you're asked to consider a resolution to exceed the square footage allowed for accessory structures in our RLD 0A zoning district. The applicants have requested a 1,500 square foot garage, which is 30 by 50. The location that they have picked is the only location that would work on this lot. I know the previous caller had said, you know, can they relocate it to another corner? And we tried trying to fit it, but there is a flood easement, a 15 to a 30-foot flood easement along the rear property line. So this is the only area of the property that a structure could fit of this size. Properties with this zoning district, there is a code that we approved when we did the annexation for the Oakport area, because these types of structures have been historically allowed up in that area. The purpose of the CUP is to review the proposal, see if it meets in with the character of the neighborhood, and then also put conditions on it. And I think what we've done as staff with the conditions that we've proposed are to address some of the concerns of the directly impacted neighbors, with adding, you know, drainage, adding, trying to put the drainage and the drain tile. I've spoken to the neighbors several times, and their prime issues are the snow melt off the building that would most likely fall onto their property, and then also the setback of the building, how close it would be to the street. We discussed with Mr. Kilsdock, or I should say I discussed with him that he would probably be amenable to more of a variance if he could push the building back further. And I did another analysis of the site, and it could be pushed back within 15 feet of the rear property line, but we would have to encroach a little bit further into the side yard setback. So then it's not, you know, it's not as close to the street. So that could be a condition that we could change if that would help the neighborhood's concerns of the size being too too in their faces when they're driving down their street. Many of the proposed, I'm sorry, I lost my place there. So the other condition that was brought up was if the council was concerned about the painting of the vehicles in the shed, that another condition could be added for possibly adding a ventilation system. I'm assuming painting is not going to be done there every day, so that would be an expensive condition to add to the conditional use permit. For your information, the immediate area does have a 1,900 square foot shed. That one is on a much larger lot, about 3 times the size of this lot. And then also there is an additional 1,200 square foot shed on a similarly sized lot. This parcel could by right, without the conditional use permit, without putting conditions on it, could build up to 1,256 square feet. So I guess your choices are approve the conditional use permit for this size with the conditions meeting some of the neighborhood concerns, or they could apply for just a building permit for a 1,256 square foot structure with no drainage, none of the setback recommendations. And that concludes my comments, but I would be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Houston, questions or comments? Councilmember Dahlquist.
Didn't we have one more email or someone had made a comment that sent in? There wasn't a second one? Yeah, there was an email from Kelsey Hoff. Also, got it? I did not get it, but she called and left a voicemail, and then said she was going to send an email in. So, can you read it? Do you have it on your? I bet I could too. I just know that she wanted to have it read for City Council.
Okay, I did not receive anything.
Okay. I guess that's my concern, is that it's not just one neighbor, it's more than one neighbor with concerns about it. I don't know if we could table this for a while, and then if you could have conversations with the neighbors with these alternates that are possible with the ventilation, because that was one concern. One of the neighbors has children, and the fumes she was concerned about. But it would just be easier if it just went back to what the rules are and built at that size, because there aren't other restrictions that would have to be checked out further after this. Even if we approve this, there's like fire code or whatever other situations that have to, hoops to be jumped through to be able to build this size.
Mayor Carlson and Councilmember Dahlquist, if they requested a building permit for 1,256 square feet, you would not have the opportunity to put the condition for the ventilation. It would just be a by right building. If it's a hobby, as they state, we would not require a ventilation system for that. We have a lot of people that work on vehicles as a hobby. That would not be, we do not have a code for that to make that as a recommendation. But if you did approve the 1,500 square foot conditional use permit, then you could put a condition for the ventilation system if you think it warrants that. And I should say I did not receive any other calls from the neighborhood. I believe the Kills Docs did mention there was one other person that had some concerns, but I did not hear from them.
Councilmember Gilbertson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Carlson. So I saw something in the July 7th meeting that, the issue to me is most of them are like 4%, but this would be 12%. Right, so we're setting a precedence that also know, hey, he built it, I can build it bigger. And I'm a firm believer that the neighbors should have, they should get together and figure, okay, what works. But if the 1,256, so that's 25% to go to 1,500. If it's 1,000 to 1,500, that's 50, that's a big jump. But what about the setbacks? Can the setbacks allow them to build the 1,256 square foot building without a variance or a conditional use permit, period?
They will still need a variance regardless of the size, because the setback required by the floodplain ordinance is 15 feet, and they're proposing 5 feet, 4 to 5 feet.
So doesn't that allow us to go back to the planning commission and come up with a different size, smaller size with those conditions of drainage and possible ventilation?
No, because what would go to the planning commission would be the variance request, and the variance, you can put conditions on the variance, but it's a separate application. What's before you tonight is the conditional use permit, whether you want to approve it, table it, or deny it. Those are the conditions that were proposed for that, but we could have similar conditions in the variance, but they have to be related to the variance request, which is a setback. It's a floodplain setback, whereas the conditional use permit is an actual use. So these proposed conditions relate to that use, the size, the location. So we do have statutory deadlines, but we do have time. If you wanted to table it, we could bring this back to the council at the next council meeting still within that time frame with a deadline.
I would like to table it and see if we can get the neighbors to agree. It makes my job way easier. I want happy people in the neighborhood.
The complaints I heard was size was the biggest, drainage is second, but that would be accomplished if we went 1256. I just don't want to set a precedent so we can go bigger and larger. I would actually vote to deny it and then have them get together and come up with a solution.
I'm just going to interrupt because I'm looking at Kat just to, since you're sitting for Mr. Shockley, when a request has been made to table, do we end discussion or do we continue discussion? Do I need a second to table it? Okay, so there's been a motion to table this. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Okay. So then it has been tabled, and I would imagine, Ms. Houston, you'll be visiting with City Manager Molly to determine when to bring it back.
We have to vote on the table?
I don't know that you vote on a table.
My understanding is, yeah, the first and the second, and it is tabled, and we'll be coming back.
Yep. Right. Thank you, Ms. Houston. Right. Moving on to number 16, the resolution to approve the City of Moorhead West Nile virus risk assessment. And I will turn this over to our Public Works Director, Steve Iverson. Sorry, too many Steves again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. Item 16 before you tonight is follow-up to the actions you took back on May 10th. If you recall, you approved the down payment or the security with aerial vector control out of Halstead for the aerial application contract, if we do use it. That's just the, like I say, the saving our spot in line in the event that we do use aerial application. And you'll recall that you directed staff to come back, which we're here now, come back and have a more specific, refined rationale of when it is appropriate to spray. So since May 10th, had to sit down and figure out how in the world are we going to paint this picture for you. So we gathered, there was over 330 emails from several people that went to all of you and the mayor, and I sorted through all those and came up with 15 people that had more than just a keep spraying or stop spraying, had a dialogue, so that showed they're engaged or more than just a fly-by shooting. Reached out to those 15 people and said, we're going to form a committee. We want people, I say Oakport to Tessa Terrace. Every place in between from that pool of 15. Ultimately, we got a pool of 5 plus myself. And I'll just, as long as I have that fresh in my mind, I'd like to recognize what became the Aerial Application Advisory Committee, the AAA committee. So first and foremost is my esteemed colleague, Councilmember Dr. Steve Lindas, was part of the committee. Allison Wallace, 4th Ward resident, PhD in ecology and evolution. Noel Harden, 3rd Ward resident, master's in agroecology. Dr. Chris McCord, another 3rd Ward resident, PhD in biosciences. And finally, Joe Allen, Allison Parkway, 3rd Ward resident, master's in engineering and master's in business administration. And through the process, he ended up being a seasonal waterer for our park maintenance department. So kind of a cool sidebar. At any rate, we took this thing on head on and met 6 times over the subsequent time between May 10th and a couple weeks ago when we came up with what we're presenting tonight. And long and the short of it is we reviewed several different, we weren't about reinventing the wheel. We reviewed several policies and practices from around the country, California, Colorado, South Dakota, Twin Cities, goes on. And ultimately, we arrived at using the California model as our template for a variety of reasons that we could get into the details if you wanted. But what it does is it reviews far more criteria than just trap counts and mosquito counts. And furthermore, all those things that are plugged into the model are things that Cass County Vector Control currently tests or samples. So there's a lot of continuity and consistency with California model and what Cass County Vector Control currently does. So when you plug all that data in, you end up with an average number at the bottom. And it's ranked from 1 to 5. Every criteria, you have it in your packet. I don't know if you digested it, but every criteria is ranked 1 to 5. 5 being the greatest risk for that particular criteria. 5 elements. If everything scored a 5, you'd end up with a 5 at the end, average of 5. What California does and what we carried across to our proposed policy is aerial application is not even a consideration until you're above a 4.1. So there's a lot of moving parts and details that go into it. And what I'd like to do, I kind of have Councilmember Lindas share his perspective on the community public engagement and how this wasn't just me dreaming up some scientific stuff to come back to you. So I think I'll just turn over to him and stand by for any questions as the discussion ensues.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Iverson. Councilmember Lindas.
Thank you, Mayor Carlson. So I do want to thank Director Iverson for the work, because he really did really put together a process that was robust and engaged a lot of our community. He mentioned the members of the advisory AAA. I'm going to stumble over the exact words. Basically, the Mosquito Advisory Aerial Application Board. But one of the people that weren't mentioned that really do need to be mentioned is Cass County Vector Control and Ben Prather. Although he wasn't always in the room, he was integral to this process. And I know Director Iverson and Chris Moorhead, Dr. Moorhead, met with him multiple times, and his involvement and his essentially Cass County Vector Control's lab and how they actually do stuff, it was critical to being able to push forward with this recommendation. So I do want to say that they're integral as part of this process. We couldn't do, or we couldn't make decisions without their assistance and help. And so that's really what we're doing here, is setting up a process that, means that Ben Prather, as the director of the Cass County, doesn't have to stand before the public. It's us making decision as a council, setting up the policy procedure, which Director Iverson can then follow. And we're also talked about, this is not a one and done. This is going to be something that is going to be revisited at least twice a year, once prior to mosquito season and then kind of after the mosquito season is done, to evaluate and say what needs to be changed. We've already modified the California model, which I will say that was actually on recommendation of Ben Prather, I believe. He was the one that actually said, hey, that's the model. It's multifaceted and it covers a lot of the things we're already covering. I don't want to get into the weeds. I think I wanted to give a big brushstroke that this was something that was done with a lot of input.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindas. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate this. And thank you for all that are on this committee for volunteering all their time. I'm excited to hear that this is not, written in stone. It's going to evolve throughout the years as the more information we gather. And is everyone really happy about this decision? Like, kind of unanimous on this process?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Happy? How do you define that?
Right, okay.
There was a clear consensus.
Okay,
It was a
excellent.
great group that had a lot of points of view and different specialties in their PhDs. I'm comfortable with it. I can stand behind it. In the event we do opt out of a flight that we've always had the right to do, we have something to fall back on as to why.
And then what's the channel of communication then before it gets to the mayor, before the mayor says yes or no for the spring?
Well, as it currently sits and the way it's been since 2015, when we partnered with Cass County Vector Control, it's fallen on the Public Works Director. If we want to tweak that, my intent, and Councilmember Lindas can corroborate this story, my intent is once I'm alerted from Cass County Vector Control of their plans, it's not like you have an hour to decide. It's 10 days to 2 weeks based on all the things that are on that worksheet of when they are pretty confident, knowing what they know, that it's going to be 1 of 2 days in the next 2 weeks. So what I plan to do is funnel that information to the AAA committee, get their feedback, and if you want to have the mayor make the final call, I'm totally fine with that, but it's always been the Public Works Director's cross to bear.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember White.
Mr. Iverson, I want to just thank you. I just can't say enough good things about this, because I think when we first started the conversation, it was clear that what we really wanted was evidence-based decision, and that's what you've provided for us. And I appreciate that we're using multiple indicators, that this is a complex way of looking at it, and I hope that once we move ahead, we'll get that information out to the public too, because I think that people saw this as this is just a knee-jerk reaction. And no, we take public health very seriously, but we want to make sure that we're balancing that important decision of when we do decide to do something that may be important for public health, but also could be detrimental in other ways to things like the long-term health of our environment. And you did touch on this, but just anything else you could say just in terms of implementation? So is all of the data that you need for all of those indicators, everything is already readily available, right? And so it would just be a matter of, then the nice thing is we have an objective criteria. So it's not really, I'm perfectly fine with having you continue to make that decision. If it changed, it wouldn't matter, but because it's an objective criteria. So it's really kind of plugging in the information, and then we see if we've hit that mark, then that's when we would we would make that decision. And so I think that in that case, it really, people can see that and they can understand why we are making that decision. So anything else you have to say about that implementation would be helpful.
Really don't have anything to add other than it is intuitive. You plug the numbers in. If you're close to 4, and that's why I suggest that I'll reach out to the AAA committee if things are goofy and it's going to be hot and it's been raining. There's a lot of, it's not just trap counts that go into a decision to apply.
I saw Councilmember Lindas first, and then Councilmember Niesmeyer.
Steve, thanks again for all this great work. What I heard from potentially Councilmember Dahlquist, thank you, was the communication piece. I see the plan. It's objective, and I want to echo everything that Councilmember White had said. But when we had made the request in May, what I heard was that we were really missing that public connection piece, that communication, because I think that's what people were really missing, is hearing when the spraying, if the spraying is ever going to happen, when it's going to happen, that they have some leeway, that they have some communication, some notice, because I think that had been a gap. Was that covered with the AAA group at all?
At length, yes.
Okay.
And proof of that being addressed, hopefully as soon as tomorrow morning, depending on the outcome of your action. I've been working with our marketing and communications director. Draft is all ready. Everybody's blessed it. Hopefully it'll go live tomorrow or sometime this week with some public education, what you can do if we don't spray, some background on why we're choosing to not spray in some cases.
Marvelous. I know
There's
that.
a ton of links. It links to all of the things that Cass County has on their website. So it'll be a heck of a good first step towards cleaning that up a little bit.
I know for the constituents that I spoke with, that was the biggest concern, and I'm elated to see those materials. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Lindos.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think speaking to the public engagement process, that is critical to have information on our website so that people actually know what the risk factor is. But also, we can have a conversation in our community. So if you are being bothered by mosquitoes, what can you do? And what can you encourage your neighbors to do? Clean your gutters. Yeah, a bunch of things like that that can be very useful. I do want to make sure that I emphasize, especially for everyone that might hear, we're not, the default is not going to be to aerial spray, that does not mean we're not controlling mosquitoes. We are still controlling mosquitoes. The bulk of mosquito control is larval control. And that contract, along with truck spraying, is still with Cass County Vector Control, and they're doing a great job. And so, all we're talking about is the last piece, which is really to address a public health emergency that would hit our region, that we want to be able to have that tool and have it still effective. And so I think that conversation needs to continue to go on. We are controlling mosquitoes. Larval side control is the most effective, and I'm going to forget exactly what Ben Prather said, but 90, I don't know, is it 97 or 95? I don't know. It's basically most of your mosquito control is larval control. You want to get them before they're mosquitoes that we recognize.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindos. Any further questions or comments? Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm looking at this committee, and couldn't we find the entomologists? Did we reach out to any entomologists in the Fargo-Moorhead area?
No.
They study this, and, I don't see any on the committee.
Not specifically. I didn't target.
So I want to point out, Dr. Moorhead he would probably classify himself as an ornithologist. He does a lot of bird research. His work as a graduate student, he actually worked with the person who developed the South Dakota model for vector-borne diseases in mosquitoes, and he was actually working on a different vector-borne mosquito disease. So his expertise in ecology is, he got together with Ben Prather, and they spoke the same language. So it was actually very good for that.
But there's only one.
There were other entomologists that were talked to, but.
Well, did anybody in the committee have experience trapping or speciating mosquitoes? Any hands-on where they're actually doing the process?
Other than Chris probably doing it with his doctoral stuff at South Dakota State, probably not.
So we just had one person who had experience in it. One person out of 5. Okay, I got some more questions here. So we're planning on communicating with our residents. The residents I've talked to are for aerial spraying, the majority of them, and we didn't poll them. Did we have any type of communication with them? Did we get like a citywide input on this policy? Because it would have been kind of nice to hear what the residents had to say about this.
Like I said at the opening.
We didn't have time, right?
Well, beyond I made an effort to get a cross-section of 4 against, neutral, north, south, east, to be on this advisory committee to get kind of that cross-section of our community.
And I'm talking the city as a whole, because we were kind of crunched for time. It would have been nice to have some input from the whole city, you know. And then, you know, I'm coming to this this risk assessment, and to me, the 4.1, the 5.0, it's basically impossible to get to that point. Because, and I have some facts here, you know, the FM area had a 14 average temperature greater than 79 degrees. How many times since 1988? There hasn't been one. So it eliminates the 5. And basically, you got to have a 5, basically 2 5s and a 4 to make this work to get aerial spraying. So, and then with the human cases in the area, if we factored in number 5 and we factored in human infections in a broader region like an adjoining county, and if we label that as a 3, it'd actually bring the average down. So, you know, if we don't hit this matrix of 4.1, but we do have more than one human infection in Clay and Cass counties, do we end up spraying then if we don't meet that threshold?
Go ahead.
Councilmember Hendrickson is looking at me, so the actual threshold of where we spray is something that then we can revisit if it turns out that we need to make adjustments. I think that that's part of the process, is that this is new, trying to make an objective measurement, and there is, so West Nile virus and other mosquito-borne diseases, it's oftentimes difficult to tell, did you get it at the lake? Did you get it here? And so you're trying to look at measurements in infection rates in your region and how they're changing. So I don't think that, you know, 4.1 is a magic number per se, that it can't be adjusted. And I think that's what we're in the process of going through this so that we can actually figure this out. Engagement in terms of people, going back to the very first thing, you know, there wasn't really time to do what I would call really open engagement to the community. That doesn't mean that I've been getting some contact or information, and I believe that Director Iverson is also. But I do know, and I want to give Director Iverson kudos for, you know, even when there was drafts of different possibilities, he did send it out to a wider email list. So even if you weren't on the advisory board, you were part of this. And so, and we got feedback from people that said, you know, great, I like what I see here. And sometimes they had suggestions.
So if we don't aerial spray, we're going to be spraying with a truck, correct?
Correct.
What's the difference between the aerial spraying chemicals and the truck spraying chemicals?
It's the same permethrin at a 0.035 per gallon application rate.
Same chemical.
Same.
So we're gonna use this. To me, it's fundamentally flawed matrix, but we're still gonna spray with the trucks, which releases. I mean, it's not nowhere near what the aerial spraying is, but it still releases that chemical in the environment.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm going to add on just a little bit to that, because I think one of the aspects of aerial spraying is that you're broadcasting the chemical across a wide region. The efficacy of it is not always very good. In fact, we've had aerial spraying where the mosquito counts went up right afterwards, and that was just last summer, you know, in terms of if you look at the 3 times that were sprayed. So the truck spraying actually allows you to do some things where, you know, if there's a region of this is something we don't have yet, but this is something where I think we're trying to go towards is much more regional and local response. So if you have an outbreak of mosquitoes in a particular area, maybe you can hit it harder in one area. You wouldn't be able to do that with aerial application. And so I think if you take your investment in how you want to actually control mosquitoes and use it for better testing and potentially better spot application or spot treatment, you're going to be much more effective in the long run than spending it all on an aerial spraying application.
And just to add on to that, in the public education and information stuff that'll hit the airwaves in the next couple days, you do have the option to opt out, exempt your property from ground spraying if somebody chooses to do so. So
that's good. Now, we contract through Cass County Vector Control, correct?
Correct.
And that involves Fargo, West Fargo, cities around. If we're not going to aerial spray, I could see Cass County not contracting with us again. So, and they take care of all the testing too, right? So if they don't renew our contract, or they don't want to, because we're not aerial spraying or getting the full coverage, how much would it cost for us to do, if we went the private route or getting our own equipment, how much would it cost to start that up? Would you?
I'd be semi-educated guessing, but equipment, personnel, whether it's overtime, getting people certified from within to do it whenever it's necessary, the lab. Maybe we could partner with Concordia or Moorhead State in their biology departments, save there. It wouldn't surprise me if it's $500,000, pretty easy to replicate the level of service we're getting from Cass County.
$500,000, okay. I've been doing plenty of reading on this, and the Center for Disease Control and the American Mosquito Control Association saying we need to eradicate mosquitoes because I think they're the #1 killer in the world, if I'm not mistaken, or they lead to it. I can't support this. I think the matrix is flawed. I think we should, we're lucky this year. Not that there's a drought, but the mosquitoes aren't as bad this year. So, like I said, I can't support this because of the matrix, and I just think it's public health issue for me. And it's a quality of life issue for me too. And I want to continue that in Moorhead. And if we get a good 10-inch rain or 5 to 10-inch rain, those mosquitoes are going to come out, and we have nothing to fight them. So I just won't support this. And when we do vote on this, I ask for a roll call vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hendrickson. Councilmember White.
Thanks. Just to follow up on a couple of those, because I do want to just verify. So you've been working pretty closely throughout this whole process with Mr. Prather from Cass County Vector Control. So he was helping you with, providing some of the information, and so we've been in contact. We already are contracting with them. So I think I don't want to unnecessarily concern people. There doesn't seem to be anything that would indicate that they have any intention of cutting ties with them, right? We still have a good working relationship with them up to this point. So I have that question. Just in terms of the efficacy, I'm glad you touched on the efficacy of the aerial spraying versus truck spraying, because I know I have the unfortunate luck of being around one of the neighborhoods that is always notoriously high in the counts, and you can tell just as I spend time in the different areas in my ward, you can tell it's very different from just a few blocks over in one part of Moorhead to another. And I remember Steve Moore talking about the fact that we have a pocket over it's kind of south of Woodlawn Park that is notoriously the highest area in the FM area. And when we spray the entire area of Moorhead, that affects everybody when really, we might be able to be much more targeted in how we do it. And that could actually be a much more effective way of approaching it. We know where those pockets are. And if we could target those areas more and do more intervention in those areas, then it really doesn't, it's more efficient, it's more effective than spraying a very widespread area. So again, I really appreciate all the work that you're doing. But if you want to touch on that, because it sounds to me like, you've been working with Mr. Prather, and I just wouldn't want people to be concerned about that. We still have a contract with them, and I imagine we would continue to have that working relationship with them. And in fact, I could see this being the model used in the rest of the FM area too.
I can't speak for Ben personally or his leadership over in Cass County. If there's something going on behind the scenes that I haven't caught wind of, I don't know. Hopefully things stay as they are, and it's a 3-year contract that I come to you with in February of '22. Everything's fine and good. But Councilmember Hendrickson brings up a valid concern that if we get kicked to the curb, it might be a little bit of a challenge to pick up where they left us. As far as, was there the hot spot and targeted spraying? When Dr. McCord and I met with Ben 2 different times, and we shared the Fort Collins, Colorado model, that was the biggest thing that we're trying to pull from that model in their program, is how they target. And Ben, not going to put words in his mouth, but he said he'd like to see his program go that direction as well, to hit the hot spots and not drive 272 miles up and down and around, and basically accomplish the same thing.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't get me wrong, I do appreciate the work of the committee, and I appreciate your work, Steve. I just have some concerns, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but who funds the Cass County Vector Control? I know we contract with them, but you know who has the main funding for them?
I would say the primary funding source for that is Cass County itself, because as the name implies, Cass County Vector Control.
So the Cass County Board would approve their budget?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Councilmember Gilbertson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Director Steve. Appreciate the extra mile that you've gone in the last 2 months. I don't need an answer tonight, but I do need, I asked earlier today, based on this model, how many times would we have sprayed in the last 10 years? We sprayed 3 times last summer, at 4.1. We should be able to plug those numbers in, right? That would be part of that process that the committee went through. How many times have we sprayed in the last 10 years? Because we're fortunate, it's dry. We'll get away with it this summer. And I'd like, as a Ward 1 resident and council member, the committee's not quite diverse enough for me. I'd like to know if that's changed. Is that change as we go into the fall and into the spring?
I'd be happy if you have somebody that wants to step up from Ward 1 or any place else. Doors open.
Okay.
Not a country club or secret society. If there's somebody that's willing, that didn't catch, the net that I cast in May, more the merrier.
Yeah, and hopefully that we should be able to garner some more engagement after this. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how I like the fact that it's going to change. I'm not crazy about the metrics, because if we haven't sprayed in the last 10 years, we're not going to spray. And then we've got Fargo spraying and when we're not. So I think it can be better, right? Progress, not perfection. So having the ability to spray is better than not having the ability to spray. So thank you.
Councilmember Seljevold.
This whole process, what I wanted to eliminate was just spraying for nuisance. If I can say spraying for health reasons, but not for nuisance. We got a mosquito spray. A mosquito count gets real high. I can protect myself. I can protect my yard. I don't need an aerial over the whole city. So I'm just, I believe we need an aerial spray if there's a major health reason. But otherwise, we're just spraying because these things are a nuisance. And that's what I would like to eliminate. And I do say, you said that they were going to review this. And so I think, this is a start. Most recipes are not perfected the first time. So if we keep looking at it, we'll get her down.
All right, I am not seeing any more hands up, and so I just want to underscore the fact that this is, as Councilmember Seljevold said, it's an ongoing recipe attempt, and that you'll continue to take input from the city and continue to evaluate. So with that, is there a motion at all?
So moved, Deb White.
Second,
Dahlquist. Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember White and a second from Councilmember Niesemeyer, and Roll call vote has been requested, so roll call vote, please.
Dahlquist,
Yes.
Gilbertson,
Aye.
Caroon,
Yes.
Nesemeyer,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Seljevold,
Aye.
Hendrickson,
No.
Lindos.
Yes.
Okay, the motion has passed. Thank you, Director Everson, for all your work and for putting that committee together, and for, I know, what will be continued work in the future. And also a thank you out to Ben Prather with Cass County Vector Control. I know that he has put in a lot of extra work too, as the members of the committee. Moving on to number 18 with council or mayor and council reports. Do any council members have any reports? Councilmember Lindos.
The League of Minnesota Cities, I joined the Improving Services Delivery Policy Committee, which doesn't really sound what it does, but it deals with anything from local control to election reform to energy policies. And so I had my first meeting, and they went over the different legislative policies that they'd been advocating for, and what process or what progress was made in the legislature this year. And then we're looking at refining those policy recommendations moving forward. And so I look forward to that work.
All right, thank you. Councilmember White.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the West Central Initiative Economic Development Division meeting today, and just wanted to report on a couple of things. One thing is we got a report on their draft comprehensive economic development strategy plan for 2022 and to 2026. And I think it fits well with the work that we're doing right now on our comprehensive plan. If any of the other council members want to look at it, I think the value here is much like what we're doing too. It's really looking at how things like workforce development, housing, education, childcare, how all of those things fit together. And then also looking at collaborative solution to those. There's also a strong focus on sustainability and equity and inclusion. And so again, if any of you want to look at a draft of that, and I know I think at some point they'll come and give a report on it. We also got an update on the revolving loan fund. And for those of you who don't know, they had a $1.3 million to loan out. They've given out about half of that. And I think this is another area that's really pertinent to Moorhead, because they do focus on areas such as the service industry, restaurants, as well as things like adaptive reuse. And the loan amounts are between $10,000 and $200,000. But they are still accepting applications. They're starting to finally see an uptick, but as I said, they still have about half of that 1.3 million to be able to give out in our West Central area. And I know that some of our Moorhead businesses are some of the ones that have applied, but we'd love to see that being used to help more of our Moorhead businesses as well. And then I also shared with Mr. Molly some information they had about a housing rehab loan fund that's a collaboration between the City of Breckenridge and West Central Initiative. And that sounds like it may be similar to some things we have, but maybe another tool in our toolbox, that they give out loans to housing developers who will then rehab older homes and then sell them back. And it's a good loan for the developer, and then they have to sell them back at an affordable housing rate. So helps increase our pool of affordable houses. So good, useful meeting with one of our partners.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Any other council members have any reports? Okay. I have a few things. I just wanted to thank Tony Tilton with the Moorhead Community, I'm blanking out, MCAM. He did an interview with me, so gave me the opportunity to talk about all the great things in Moorhead and some of the things that we have happening in our community, in our city. Also, thank you to Troy Krabanoff with Krabanoff Real Estate, who invited me to a breakfast that he had to raise money to support the Blue, to raise money to help with the K-9 unit with the Moorhead Police Department. And a shout out to Bill Bartholomew, who did another excellent cruise night I know he was at the last council meeting inviting us all to be there. Also had the opportunity to go through a mobile escape room, which we escaped in 45 seconds left. So that was really fun. There's a lot of really fun, unique, family-friendly things to do at cruise night, and there'll be 2 more left this first kind of cruise season in Moorhead. Also, Councilmember White and I both attended the Birthing of a Diamond ribbon cutting, which is Destiny Holiday's new nonprofit organization that is now based in the Clay County Social Services building, and so that was really exciting to be there for that ribbon cutting. And also did a Navy Week proclamation, so that will be appearing soon with the other mayors of Fargo, West Fargo, and Dilworth. And 2 last things, we are having the Ward 2 Coffee with the Mayor this Thursday at 6 o'clock, from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock at the gazebo on the Horizon Shores by the South Pond, between 24th Avenue South and 38th Street. So it's the gazebo that has the playground next to it, not the gazebo on the north side that has no parking lot around it, and no playground or porta potty. So that is important. And this week's Cash Mob is at El Torero, which is a wonderful, great, authentic Mexican restaurant on Highway 10. If you haven't been there, please join me sometime tomorrow and get some chips and salsa and some queso blanco. That's all I have. City Manager Molly.
Thank you, Mayor. So 2 items. One is related to the city's comprehensive plan process. All are invited to, this next week, we're kicking into phase 3 of 4. So now's where things start feeding back a little bit. There was the initial phase that was virtual. The second phase, which is a lot of data gathering and information, putting things back together. And then this third is where everyone's gonna be able to get together for the first time. So this will be really great. There's this, they're calling it Moorhead Design Week. And there's a number of community events and activities that are being planned to share perspectives and ideas, help inform the future growth and development of the city. So let's see here. Monday, July 19th from 5 to 7 at the MCOM Center. This is where it kicks off. This is where we'll be able to pull a lot of that information, ask questions. Everybody will be on board. We'd love to hear what people think about the vision, give ideas on enhancing the plan and the like. So this is also an opportunity for the council to see that as well. And all the boards and commissions and public information is out there. And then throughout the week, there's different workshops and walking tours in different focus areas in the city, and all that full schedule can be found on the city's website, cityofmoorhead.com. So. And then if people aren't able to access or there are any language barriers, anything like that, just reach out, let us know. I know there's talk of trying to provide the information in different ways, and so trying to reach as many people as we can at this phase. And then there will be another in that 4th where we come back, kind of trying to bring the plan home. So. Let's see here. The other item is, so we have a firefighter of the year in our midst here in Moorhead, who will be recognized on July 16th. Firefighter Anthony Cross will be awarded Minnesota Firefighter of the Year by the Minnesota American Legion. And let's see here. He was nominated, in the letter, it says, the committee found Anthony to be very dedicated and a hardworking firefighter. His positive can-do attitude and exemplary performance reflect strongly on the Moorhead Fire Department and the city of Moorhead as a whole. So congratulations to Firefighter Cross and all he does and all the incredible public service personnel in our community.
Right. Is that when I'm in the dunk tank?
On Monday night is when you're going to the dunk tank, yes, Mayor.
Yep. So that might be an incentive to get people there.
Popcorn and all, a whole kind of festival.
Dunk the mayor.
Yeah.
This is when maybe Jonathan wants to step back in just for an evening. All right, moving on to number 20. Do I have a motion to go into executive session under attorney-client privilege pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05, subdivision 3B, to discuss pending litigation?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Gilbertson motioned, Dahlquist second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. All right, we are now in executive session. right, we are back from our executive session. Do I have a motion to close the executive session?
So moved. Deb White.
Second, Karun.
Oh, got White and Soldivold, sorry. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. All right, executive meeting is now closed. Do I have a motion to move forward with Peanut Cat?
Yep.
We're good, we don't need to do a motion on the, okay. All right, do we have any new business then? Nope. Any additional citizens who wish to address the council? Okay, seeing a shake of the head from our Madam Clerk, then the Moorhead City Council is now adjourned, 7:58 on Monday, July 12th. Thank you, Moorhead. Have a good night.